Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Square Ball podcast, powered by William Hill, with myself, Dave McIntyre, and my co-host Lee Keegan. How are we doing?
Good, yourself?
We've managed to survive the first 4 episodes, and hopefully people are continuing to come back for just that little bit more. We've got a great episode coming your way today. Ashling Thompson, current camogie star with Cork. She's going to be joining us for a really insightful chat into her life and her career and all the highs and lows on and off the field. So we're really looking forward to that. In fact, it's the first person we've spoken to who's actually still playing at the highest level, as opposed to you has-beens, yourself and Porrig and Darren O'Sullivan and Sean Cavan and Keith Higgins, all of whom were brilliant with their time and really open and honest in their engagement. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, they are all in the bank. They will not be dated in any way, so you can go back to them in a few weeks or a few months' time and listen to them, but try and get a listen to them as quickly as you can, because they really are worth it. We certainly believe that to be the case. Anyway, thanks so much for all your engagement so far over the last few weeks on our YouTube comments, on Instagram, on Twitter as well. It's been great to get some feedback from our listeners. We have an awful lot more still to come over the coming weeks. But given that we are recording this of a Monday morning, 2 days after Mayo's exit from the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship, I guess it would be remiss of us not to have a little chat to Lee about it. Mayo continue to find bright, new, wonderful ways to exit the Football Championship, and it's going to be at least one more year before you can slay the ghosts of 1951.
Yeah, I think the general kind of consensus post-game is probably a deflation a little bit. I've said probably a good bit over the last few weeks that expectation probably isn't the same as it was previously, and that's just, you can't compare, from team to team and styles and all that. But I think optimism was quite high after the Dublin performance, and then getting Derry in a home game to I suppose back that up, and they just came out and they were very flat first half and kind of give Derry the impetus to really go at them and set their stall out. And
that was the worry all week, though, wasn't it?
I was worried about the
such
game,
high levels against Dublin.
Yeah.
To have to do it again 7 days later in what was a proper championship game, and the sunshine and massive crowd in the Hyde, and then suddenly it's a half empty McHale Park against a Derry team that are not going well. And you always got the sense that May were really going to struggle to lift it again, and 3 first half points was evidence of that.
Yeah, and that's why this game for me there was no baggage for Derry. It's not like there was the sideshow with Tyrone and the sideshow with Louth. I felt nice clean sweep or bill of health for them going into this game, and I just knew we wouldn't get the heights the week 4. But what's probably interesting, even reflecting back, is we talk about the post-match reaction from the Dublin game and that deflation from Kevin and the squad. That probably spoke a story in itself, really.
Yeah, he knew that might cost them.
How gutted they were. And then when the game, Derry went extra time penalties, you're thinking, okay, 6 this time again, 7 this time, how are they really going to get up for it? And Derry's reward for their victory is Kerry in the quarterfinal next weekend. Just on it, though, and this is not an excuse for Mayo, but I'm still, this non-skill system of the championship has me really irked. Like, even from a Galway Mayo perspective, okay, we're talking about the championship now, we're in the cutthroat stuff, but Derry haven't won a game in their last 4. Technically outright they won on penalties, didn't actually win the game on normal time.
So by the same token, you're going to tell us Mayo haven't lost a game?
1 game versus 4.
Right.
So but I'm talking about the structure, not Mayo. I'm talking about the system. I'm talking about the overall scheme of it. It's just crazy. I mean, teams that are actually trying to, like, even take Galway, they're going in on the back of they haven't lost a game in championship, and yet they're nearly punished as a result. Now they're playing the All-Ireland champions at the weekend. So it's that kind of stuff that I can see why it's getting irked and people are getting annoyed.
And Roscommon have been beaten by Mayo twice in the championship this year, and yet they're in the last 8. Look, we could just bin the chat with Ashling and just spend an hour.
No. I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. I'm just saying, but it's not an excuse. I'm just making the overall.
Well, look, it's not perfect yet.
Yeah,
it probably will never be perfect. And I know Jarlath Burns will be looking to tweak it and do whatever he can over the course of the close season. I don't think the 2025 championship will mirror the 24 championship exactly, but there is no perfect solution to this, unfortunately.
We're never happy. That's just reality. But it will be interesting from next year what those tweaks will be, and even from the FRC committee, what rules will be implemented as a result in the back of that as well. So listen, we have some great games coming this weekend, and looking forward to the knockout phase now.
Do you give Derry a chance of beating Kerry?
I still fancy Kerry comfortably on the back of, I suppose, going to extra time, penalties and the whole drama around it. And if Kerry are worth their salt, like we're all saying, they should take her out of business at the weekend.
And I was in Salt Hill on Saturday, and on the evidence of their Galway's win over Monaghan, I wouldn't hold out an awful lot of hope for them of upsetting Dublin, particularly with Shane Walsh having tweaked his hamstring. We don't know if he's going to be available. They'd want to up it massively to be in with a shout remotely close to Dublin going down the stretch.
But even their scoring charts, Dave, has been very low. And you look at Dublin's percentage then, and looking at the contrast between, for me, Dublin back in Croke Park, they'll exploit Galway in those gaps, I think, and that space. And I do think Galway will struggle to hit a big score against Dublin at the weekend. So again, I can only see a Dublin outcome there as well. So
on to our guest today. I can't wait for this chat. Ashling Thompson, she's been in and around the Cork panel for nearly 20 years now. And is it fair to say that when we think of camogie stars, ladies football stars that are recognisable outside of real camogie and ladies football aficionados, that she's probably one of the real first superstars? As in, there's an awful lot of people who wouldn't watch camogie or ladies football year on year, month on month, but if they saw Ashling walk into a room, they'd know exactly who she was. Correct. There haven't been many of those over the years, and that's those sports really need those people. And you're right, she the most genuine, probably first superstar that her name probably is the first that rhymes off your tongue in terms of camogie in general. And I said I can't wait to get in the chat with her, but the thing with Ashling is there's always been opinions out there about her, even outside her playing career, and I think it'll be great just to dig into that now and get a few good answers around that, and looking forward to her talking about her career off the field, on the field, all that kind of good stuff now, and see where that goes. Yeah, people think they know Ashling, I think, but they clearly don't. But let's spend the next hour trying to get to know her a little bit better. Brilliant. Coming up, it is Ashling Thompson, episode 5 of the Square Ball podcast. Okay, it is time to welcome Ashling Thompson to the Square Ball podcast. Ashling, thanks so much for coming up.
Thanks for having me.
To us.
Yeah.
We said before you came in, I don't know if you're listening to us, it's the first podcast we've done with someone who's still playing at intercounty level.
Yeah.
The rest of them, it's kind of been a look back on their careers, which we will do with you today. But
just to say, he called us has-beens, so that's
all right.
Am I wrong?
I'm not going to argue.
I'm not wrong.
So I'm not a has-been.
No, you're good.
You're a current bean.
Yeah.
But 34 years of age. I said you first brought onto the Cork panel in 2006. That was your first taste of what it was like to play or train at that elite level. Like, how's the body? How's the mind? It's hard to keep really going back to the well year on year.
Yeah. I think you don't really appreciate it, I think, as much in the earlier years. And to be fair, I've been extremely lucky throughout my whole career. I've never had any serious or major injuries, up to only a couple of years ago when I did my cruciate. But and I think, honestly, it was a blessing and a curse in a way, because it honestly gave me a new lease of life, I think. It was a new focus, and like even just having that time out to kind of focus on myself. And I think even I was surprised with my reaction initially when I did when I tore my cruciate. I was like, is it just going to be this massive setback now where like mentally I won't be able to put myself in a position to go back? Like, will it be a retirement thing?
Because that's an open door to retirement at that age.
Of
Once
course.
You hit your early 30s, people are going to write you off anyway as a player.
Of course, yeah.
It happens to everyone who gets the wrong side of 30.
And
let's just retire her today.
Exactly.
And then that's a genuine opportunity to say, do you know what, I've had a good run.
So you had a good reset, really.
Exactly. I'd imagine that would have been a lot of the talk, even just my own family and stuff like that, or like, people from the area probably would have thought, oh, that's probably her last go. But like, it was strange in a sense, because I always said as well, like, that whenever I hear of people doing those sort of injuries, and I always said, geez, I don't think I'd ever be able to come back from something like that. Like, it must be horrendous. But
it never, I'd say when it did happen, it never crossed your mind.
Never crossed my mind.
Brilliant.
From the get-go. Like, it was Dr. Con Murphy. He's always the first phone call. He's just the man that'll get the job done, and from there it was just, I never looked back. Like,
I'll put it to you though that intercounty hurlers and footballers and camogie players, you're a selfish bunch by the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
There's so much commitment required, so much training. Like, other people in your life probably have to take a background seat for the most part for you to get the most out of yourself. That you obviously came back in your first year after rehabbing the ACL, you win an All-Ireland.
Yeah.
So if Cork weren't in a place where an All-Ireland camogie title was a realistic proposition, maybe you wouldn't have come back. Did that come into it?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No, because we hadn't won an All-Ireland. I think that was our 5th season going in without winning an All-Ireland, and for us that's a drought, a major one.
But could you sense that there was something building?
I could sense that there was something building. But again, I suppose 5 years is a very long time for us. So there's still always going to be that little bit of, I wouldn't say doubt, but something in the back of your mind that's telling you, do you know, it might never happen again. Like I might never win another All-Ireland again. But in terms of retiring, not once did it ever cross my mind.
Because your role changed then, because obviously you're captain 15 and then you have the injury. You come back to kind of a new role then within the panel. How did you find that? Because you know you're obviously going to be one of the first names then as a starter. Based on what you've done previously, was that a new role, or did you find that difficult, or how did you, I suppose, deal with that side of it?
Coming back after the injury, so I found that I was getting really frustrated about the little things, and I suppose I do live like a good hour away from the city as well, so I wouldn't have been going to many of the hurling sessions, because obviously when it comes down to my recovery and stuff like that and travel, it makes more sense to be at home. I would also do the gym in Limerick City because it's a lot closer to where I live than Cork, so that, you know, my time would have been completely taken up with that. I would have been in the gym 5-6 days a week and had those conversations with management, and they were obviously whatever was best for me and to get me back 100%. And even my medical team were Limerick, you know, they were all in Limerick City. So when I did make the sessions and stuff like that, I did find that I was getting heated quite quickly, because if things weren't perfect, and obviously a lot of that frustration was coming from my rehabilitation. And if I saw that even somebody wasn't making the effort that I was putting in, it was almost like I was comparing my effort to other people's, and I was kind of sometimes taking that frustration out on players, and and it wasn't even in a negative way. I just wanted so much from everyone because I knew what I was putting in, and that's probably a selfish way to look at it, but I think too it's just that, like, at the end of the day I know what we're capable of. So when I was coming back in and making all that effort, I was like, you know, I need to see the same from both sides. And it's not that they weren't, but as I said, I was just picking on the different things. I was being stubborn about it, and again, I wasn't involved in the environment, and I think that was frustrating too. Just, it was obviously a new thing for me, as you say, like it's completely different to not be involved, like, in such.
And like your motivation as well, like I that's like you're saying you're 5 days. Did you find that hard? I suppose you're not that you're training alone a lot of those evenings. Was that hard to get motivated for, knowing that the group there are collectively together, and you know the crack in there? And, you know, it's always great being in a team environment. Was there ever kind of inklings that, oh jeez, I have to do this on my own again tonight, or do I have to go and do this? Or, you know, like, initially
I did find it really hard, and that was it too. The frustrating point too was the social aspect of not being in a group environment. And, you know, I've always said that, like, I would never want to be anywhere else, especially when I'm going, you know, people are going through difficult times, or you just had a stressful day. Like, that's exactly where you want to be, is amongst your teammates, because that's my happy place. So I found the social aspect of it extremely difficult, and like it's almost like an isolation, because obviously I'm at home, everyone's working, so even when I'm at home, just like, you know, a lot of the rehab in terms of the ACL is like really basic at the beginning. You're just trying to straighten your leg, or, you know, you're kicking a mid ball just off the wall to try and gain the strength. So it's the smallest things. So yeah, I would say after a couple of months, like, and even when I did go back into the environment and meet the girls, I found I was really anxious.
Right.
Socially awkward. Like,
because you're probably away for that such a long period.
Exactly.
You're trying to fit back in. You're
you're looking at the four walls on your own. You're not really talking to anyone either, because obviously the girls are focused on their job. Obviously you get the odd text and stuff like that, but everyone's just so focused on what they're doing. Like, everyone's selfish, like, in that moment, and you need to be. But I would say it was extremely difficult from a social aspect going back into the group. I found it was very awkward, and really had to, like, you know, learn how to
socialize again.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah.
On that, do you find, like, you're a child practically going into the panel for the first time?
Yeah.
I mean, you must be seen by some of the players on that panel as pretty old and out of touch. That you're as the years go by, and I don't know, Lee, did you have a similar experience? You got less and less in common with the new people arriving onto the county panel than you would have done 10, 15 years ago, and like in terms of trying to relate to those. And
do you know what though? It's actually funny that, like, I relate more to younger generation than I do to my own. age.
Why is that?
I don't know, am I immature?
That's a good thing. You know, like
you know,
it's,
yeah, no, like as in, and you see, I first came on when I was 16, but I remember playing a league game against Kilkenny. I think it was down in Cork, and like I just knew I was out of my depth completely, physicality wise, and like even at that age, the whole way up, you'd know yourself, like you're just extremely competitive, even when you're small.
you think
know?
you can take on the world.
Yeah, and when you know you're not up there, like it's just a lot to take in, and I knew at that moment it just wasn't for me. It wasn't the right time, and I just stepped away.
So that wasn't a management decision. Because you just said there that maybe I'm a bit immature.
No, I wasn't.
That sounds like an unbelievably mature decision to make for a
I
16-year-old.
know, yeah, and again, I wasn't the most mature at 16 either. Like,
And
but
so
yeah,
what did management say
oh,
when you
Jesus.
said, you know what, I'm just not good enough for this level? Because they feel that they have an eye for a player. They brought you into the panel for a reason.
Yeah,
And then you're telling them that actually you've got this wrong. I'm actually not able for this level.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to take a step back. What was their reaction?
you see, Cork is a very big county, right? So the people that were involved at the time were from the city. So, it's kind of similar in the hurling. Like, there's some parts of Cork, like in particular North Cork, where you wouldn't see a lot of players coming from that side. First of all, because we're just so far away from the city. So, like, I don't know if they... I don't remember the conversation because it was nearly 20 years ago. But I don't know if they would have minded or not. They probably did see me as a big prospect. But, you know, at that time, that team was incredible. Like, stalwarts.
Full of stars.
Like, heroes. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like they were under pressure to be bringing in the younger generation. They obviously wanted to see what we had. But I don't think... Again, I can't really remember the conversation, but it was just like an okay, I suppose.
It's incredible to actually even think of at that age. Say, do you know
Yeah.
what? I'm not ready for this.
Yeah, and I was heading into fifth year leaving cert, like, and again, just being so competitive, I just didn't feel comfortable being there, and especially because the other girls were so much older than me as well. I just didn't feel comfortable even at that time. I do have this kind of social anxiety thing, and I do think it comes from even when I was younger, that like I always felt it was very hard to fit in. And I don't know, I can't even explain to you where that comes from, but, you know, I always kind of found it, I was very shy in a sense, like hyper and, you know, the usual, like, but still very reserved and shy, like.
But see, people wouldn't... We said before you came in that people think they know you, but they don't. They just have
No.
opinions on you, or they've read an interview, or they've seen some of the issues you've had off the field, and they've some of the tragedy that's followed you around in your private life, and they think, well, Ashling Thompson, I know her, and I know what her story is, but because you always came across as such a really good speaker and so outgoing and extroverted, and so often it's those people who do have those kind of inner demons and suffer from shyness.
Yeah.
So people might think, oh, well, she just fitted in straight away, but in your head you're thinking, I've absolutely no place been in this group.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the opposite to whatever.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, and even coming up with Cork, you know, I would have been a really big player in Cork, like, in terms of, I always found it easy to make the teams, even from Cork colleges, it was called. So that was from first year, like when you were in secondary school. So that's kind of where it started, like an under 14 type competition. But I never had to, you know, I was never struggling to make a panel or a team. Like, I just had the ability from a younger age, not even in terms of my skill set, but I did athletics and stuff and did like a whole variety of sports when I was younger, and I think it just really stood to me. So like I would have been the complete opposite player when I was younger of what I am now. Like I would have been tiny, like really fast, like forward, goal scorer, like so I never found it hard, but I suppose at the same time I always felt a bit of a spotlight then. So I suppose going into that senior team, you know, I even find it now when you see a minor coming in. You know, some players might see it as, oh, we need to kind of give her a bit of a hard time now, like this is not going to be a pushover, especially if she has a bit of a talent. So I guess like that kind of spotlight going into an adult setup was probably just very daunting for me. So it's probably part of that decision to step away.
I wonder, because if anybody hasn't seen Ashling's Lake Regale episode, I'd give it a look. Your mother is a formidable woman. And
no messing there.
There's real athlete's pedigree on both sides of your family. And obviously you were brought with a lot of your drive, and genetically you've got two parents who are really good at what they were doing and immersed in the GA, so it was no surprise you were kind of as talented as you were growing up. But I'm sure she saw big things for you from the very start. When you
She
tell
did.
her that I've been given this opportunity to go into the Cork panel, ma'am, but now, do you know what, I've decided to step away. What's her reaction?
Yeah. And again, to be fair, she's always been extremely supportive in terms of my decisions. And it was definitely when I got older. I think when I was younger, I was pushed very hard. So like, I remember even doing athletics. There was something about individual sport. I think again, I don't know, was it just like an isolation thing where I found individual sports extremely hard. Like I'd get so nervous, and athletics, I was kind of forced into it. I never wanted to do it. And
Forced by who?
That's what I was
My
gonna say.
mother,
Was that-
like-
okay. So when you said it had been hard, they were pushing you to try and
Oh, yeah.
be massive, be a success. So that was
Yeah.
coming from okay.
well, my mother knew she
talent.
knew the benefits.
Right.
She knew the talent, but she
Yeah.
knew the benefits from it. Like,
But are you being
she
dragged
was an
kicking and
athlete, you
screaming
see.
to like athletics meetings and that kind of thing?
No, like I did go and I did enjoy it. I think it was the competition side.
Yeah.
So when it came to a race, it was the nerves,
Okay.
and I didn't want to be there. And like,
Build up.
I know, like she didn't.
So
bait
just
me
that
with
feeling a
whip,
bit out of your
like,
comfort
into-
zone.
Yeah, doing it. It's just being out of my comfort zone. So like she knew that I didn't fully enjoy it, but she could see the potential. Like, and I did enjoy like athletics training and stuff like that. Sure, I was a child. Like I loved doing whatever activity.
Yeah.
You know, there was no such thing as phones or social media, like, or tablets, or
We were lucky then.
you know, like you play it outside. So I loved doing all types of sport. It was more so the competition side of the athletics that was just, again, very daunting for me. But my parents pushed me, but in particular my mother, like, pushed me really hard. And like, do you know, if I didn't do well, she wouldn't be the first one to like plamass me. Like, she'd be the first one to tell me like, you should have done better. So she was down my throat from the beginning, like, for sure. Like,
Were you nervous after a bad day then coming home?
no, like I wouldn't say nervous. She wouldn't be like, she'd just be honest.
Which is
You
good,
know,
like, Joe, like
it's
it's
not a
important,
bad
like,
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there's no point pulling the wool over my eyes either. I know at that age too, like, a lot of people would say, oh, it's harsh, like, and you need to.
But
pull
did she
the wool,
deliver it?
but-
Did she deliver that assessment of any given performance in a constructive way, or did she make you feel that she was disappointed in you for the way that you'd played? Because my son would come off the field and he'd say, "Well, how do you think I did today, Dad?" And immediately I would just turn it back on him and say, "Well, tell me how you thought you did." Because I don't want to tell him he was amazing when he clearly wasn't doing his
Yeah, you need
best.
to ask them the question, like.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
want to tell him, like, if I know he's given his best and maybe has made some mistakes, that's all you're looking for from a child.
Yeah.
But what way did she deliver kind of that critique of your performance?
Yeah, I would say that it was probably a bit too direct at times. She would be very honest. But definitely when I got older, it was very constructive.
Okay.
So like, again, that's learning for her. It was learning for me, because I would say then kind of like she would have coached me as well. She would have been involved in our camogie setup, like with the club. And she teaches as well in Milford National School, which is where I went to school. So she's been my coach /
Wow.
teacher
Yeah.
from the get-go.
No escaping her.
No.
No.
But it's interesting because, you know, you're saying direct. So did your mother, I suppose, learn over time because of your anxiety
Absolutely.
and you
Yeah.
know, some of the mental toughness or issues that you went through? So she obviously learned
Exactly.
in tangent with
Yeah.
you of those years to
Yeah.
be more constructive in how she fed back to you,
Yeah.
which is
And that's the way it would have been anyway.
Yeah.
You know yourselves, the coaching before, like, you wouldn't do it now, the way you'd speak
Yeah,
to children.
yeah,
And
yeah.
do you know what I mean? And it's just having that, not being aware. Sure, nobody was aware of mental health or
Yeah.
anxiety. You know, there was no such thing as that at the time. So it's not that she was wrong. It was just, you know, it was like a natural way to.
It's
to go
fascinating.
about
because
it, like.
We had Sean Cavan here a few weeks ago, and he had nearly the opposite with his relationship with his father, where, you know, was very little coming back to Sean. It was, you know, emotion, where it seems that you always had that kind of real support from your mother, although it could
Yeah.
have been direct, like through your career, which
It
is
was direct, but I
but
think
in a good way, probably.
in
for
a
yourself.
good way,
Yeah.
like it always pushed me to be better then.
Yeah.
I think if she was the opposite, I would have settled to be second best. You know, I think in a lot of ways it probably has got me to the point of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, you know, it's that resilience now. Like, I know when I'm at my best, but I know when I'm not. And like, even when I'm at my best, I still want to push. You know, even to this day, like, there's still, you know, a lot of players will kind of say, oh, I had a great year, or this and that. But like, every year I come away, I'm constantly looking for more. Like, it's that constant push. And I do think it comes from being pushed.
But
You
was
know.
was that at the cost of another part of your relationship with your mother, like where do hear some players and they acknowledge that had they not been driven as hard by their mother or father, that they would never have gone on to achieve what they achieved, but then in the same breath acknowledging that it maybe damaged the parent-child relationship in other ways.
Yeah, look, it probably did for a while, you know, especially my teenage years. She probably put too much pressure on me, especially when I was coming into like my late teens. You know, that's the time then where you don't push because, you know, you're like making more adult decisions, I suppose, and you don't want to be pushed. I think it's grand to push you when you're a child, but I think when you get into that teenage stage and you're in secondary school and, you know, you're so much more open to, and then social media was kind of starting around that time, and you know, you knew, like again, I was more so protected when I was in national school because she was there and going through all that. But when you get to secondary school, then she's not there, and you know, you're a lot more exposed to different friend groups, and I don't know, you kind of have to start figuring out things for yourself, I guess. So when she did push me then in that aspect, like it was kind of, we retaliated a lot on the pitch, very vocal back and forth, like, you know, there was no holding back. So
was there a screaming match ongoing mid-game between you and your mother?
Yeah.
It's a huge pressure then, you know, like.
Yeah, it was screaming match, like.
So what kind of stuff are you saying to her?
I can't say it on this podcast.
Sorry, Mammy, we won't.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of language being used, and do you know? But at the same, do you know what it is? I think at the same time, you see, my dad was a gas pipeline welder, so he used to be away for 9 months of the year. He worked all over the world, so like my mother was my biggest influence in my life, and I live in Newtown Shandrum, which is a neighbouring village to Milford, so I had no friends in Newtown. Do you get what I'm saying? So like, me and Mem, and we were, because I was so involved in so many sports, we were almost like best friends. Like we just hung around with each other too much. Do you know? Yeah. Do you know? Like our lives were totally engulfed. And again, when you get to that teenage stage, like there has to come a point where you're just like.
But going to secondary school, what's that like then? Because again, your mother's been teaching you; she's your coach. That must have been tough, though, because it's kind of the first time you're moving away.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. But luckily, the school that I went to was an extremely successful camogie school at the time.
Is that why she sent you there?
Yes, but it was the place to go. Okay, like that's where all of like Anagiri would have went to Milford National School. All the Watsons, like these are big names. Would have been big names in camogie years ago. Elena Reardon, like let's say our club team when we won a few All Irelands, you know, back in this, let's say between 13 and 16. That whole group went to Milford National School and we all grew up together. So, I mean, from there, everyone went to St. Mary's in Charleville. Like, that's the school to go to, like. And yeah, like Drumculloher would have been Limerick. So, Charleville was the closest in terms of a Cork school. And if you wanted to excel in sport, like, that was the place to go. So, camogie then, you know, being introduced. I think if I had went to a different secondary school where sport wasn't such an influence, I probably would have really struggled.
Different outcome.
Yeah. But I just settled in so quickly because.
And sorry, go back to your father then. I suppose you said 9. How did you find that 9-month period then? Like, was that tough not having him around, or?
Yeah.
Was there that gap, I suppose, because, you know, obviously father-daughter, like, you know.
Yeah, it definitely was. No, we had a great relationship and still do to this day. Like, I'm the favourite. So. Of course, yeah, dad is good. Not my mother's though. But yeah, no, it was difficult. But again, I think just so much of my time was taken up with sport from when I was so young the whole way up. Like, again, Milford National School as well was just so successful in sport. Like, I was extremely lucky in terms of my sporting career. Obviously has had a huge influence. Wouldn't be where I am today only for Milford and then the camogie and then St. Mary's Charleville. Like, I was just so lucky in that sense. But yeah, it was hard, but he's been at it since the day I was born, so it was natural, you know. I didn't know any different. Like,
talk to us about those years then between 2006 and then, for our listeners who don't know your background, there was a really serious car crash that you were involved in 2009 that obviously set you back physically and mentally for quite some time. And we think of you as an All-Ireland winning captain in 2015, but so much water had to flow under the bridge before you're walking up the steps of the Hogan Stand and lifting the Duffy Cup.
Yeah.
So had you made a breakthrough at that point before that car crash in 2009, or was Where were you mentally and physically in terms of a top level camogie player when that happened?
I was still kind of playing. So let's say when I stepped away around when I was 16 or that age, I still played on the intermediate teams, and you know, in Cork they still kind of wanted me playing at some level, and especially if I wanted to excel. So I started off, maybe I think I played junior just for a couple of games, but I went straight up to the intermediate, and it would have been senior B at the time, actually. But yeah, so let's say going back to when you could say I was kind of clashing with my mother in that late teenage stage, I think then I started to like get involved with the wrong friend groups as well in school, and probably outside of school as well. Like I started, you know, then boys came into the equation, but the wrong boys, you know. So
I don't hear this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, giving you fear over your daughters now growing up. No, I'm joking. But you know, and like things like that, just it happens. Like it happens to
the
everyone.
distractions of life.
And just bad relationships and stuff like that. But I was still playing camogie. Like that was still my outlet. Like no matter what was going on in my life. But I think I was actually just going into. I just had started college, in 2009, and then the accident happened. So straight away I had to step out of college, and then it was my first time ever that I had no sport, like that. I'd never been injured again, even as a child. I'd never experienced time off in terms of my sport.
So as chaotic as things were becoming in your personal life, in terms of, you know, you're rebelling like most teenagers would. And
I was, yeah,
there's
for sure.
your start to drink for the first time, and you're interested in the opposite sex for the first time, and in any serious way. Camogie was always there in the background to fall back to.
Yeah.
Only now it wasn't.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
So the one stabilizing element of your life, even when things became chaotic, that was just whipped away.
Yeah.
So how tough was that?
It just escalated so quickly that like.
And this is because of a neck injury.
Yeah, neck and back. Yeah. So I mean, you know, the neck brace and all that kind of crack. But sure, we actually had, I think it was a league final with the club the following day after it had happened, and that as well was just a killer for me. Like, things just and looking back at it now, it's just so vague in my memory, because you know, trauma just seems to be so vague. Like, and it's almost a good thing that I don't remember those times as well as I should, because I honestly think if I did, it would affect me so badly. But things just escalated really quick, you know. Again, the whole drinking, like getting into things that I shouldn't have been doing. And
did you fall back with that group more than did you think?
Oh yeah.
This outlet's gone, this group, I'm going to rely on this group.
Yeah.
Probably knowingly that it's not the right thing.
Definitely not the right thing.
But very hard not to get sucked into it, because they're there in your life where this thing that you love so much is not. So.
And like they wouldn't have been, you know, they would have been. I obviously don't like to go into it too much, but the group that I was hanging around with would have been quite a feared group in terms of the location, and you know, like they would have been.
Did you revel in that?
I did. Do you know why? Because like the attention that came from it. Okay. So like even the couple of boyfriends that I had at the time would have been, you know, they would have been feared individuals, like especially around my area, even in terms of Limerick City and stuff like that. So
that
like,
didn't frighten you?
No,
it didn't. Make you feel safe, more?
It made me feel safe, yeah. And I think even people started to fear me as well. So like the attention that I was getting from that just filled that void in terms of the attention that I used to get from sport, because I was just so talented as a young player. I think that's the void that filled it for me.
And all the energy you would expend training and practicing and playing matches, like even when you came into the studio today, there's just a vibe off you that you just don't strike me as someone that is comfortable sitting still.
Yeah,
you know, there's just this kind of radiance off you that like you're just waiting to burst through the doors and just do something.
Yeah.
So when you're there in a neck brace and you can't train, you can't play, your head must have been melted.
Yeah, and that was like, I got so much attention from it in terms of like, I loved the fact that people were afraid of me, and then I was kind of untouchable, because if you came near me or touched me, then you'd have them to deal with. Like, you know, like I don't even have to say, you know,
we get
where I'm coming from. So like, again, it was just, and then of course that's just escalated completely, like over a 3 or 4 year span, to the point where I was just getting myself into extreme danger, like at that point, you know. And just in terms of my mental health, so obviously then I started to experience like a lot of suicidal thoughts and things like that, because I couldn't figure out why I was feeling this way. Like, again, mental health was never spoken about.
Not then, as it is now. Like,
As it is now, exactly. And, you know, I'd probably seen a lot of things that nobody should ever see, and especially in the background that I grew up in. Like, I grew up in the countryside playing GA, you know, where my mother was my best friend, and I was never exposed to an environment like it. You know what I mean? Where you're involved with people who are into violence and drugs, and, you know...
And does your mother know at this stage?
Oh, yeah, she knew, and... that was the killer for me, I think, only looking back on it. And it was only when I got to that, let's say, that third or fourth year, like, where things really went out of control. Like,
your lowest
in terms
point.
Of, my lowest point, even in terms of my aggression. Like, my brothers were afraid of me, like, and Michael's 4 years older than me, like, because, again, of who I was involved with, they were afraid to say anything to me in case. And I was capable of drawing somebody on them. That's how out of my mind that I was at the time, like, you know.
So were there no levels of self-awareness, no moments of kind of clarity?
Not. No.
You were just in your own bubble, and everybody else
under the influence of everything, like,
Okay.
you know, in people, substance, you name it, like. So, and again, when you dig a hole so deep, like, it's only going down, like, you know, there's no way out, especially when you get involved with people like that too. There's no way out, like. Especially, well, there is, but you don't see it.
But for you, because you're saying you're at that low ebb, like, all you can see is them, that thought. Your process, not thinking of the good over this side.
No.
Because you don't see anything else.
No, you don't.
Bad that's in your life.
Exactly.
Not bad, but at your time, you probably was your only release valve.
Exactly.
As such, like, you know.
And at the same time, I thought if I lost them, I'm extremely exposed here. So what am I going to do? Like, I had a lot of, you know, what would you say? I had a lot of enemies, like, you know, at the same time, and there was a lot of eyes on me. Probably not as much as I thought, but, like,
so paranoia
that's how
thing
you
as
feel.
well.
Yeah, that's what happens when you get involved in that kind of stuff, is like, if that is taken away from you, it's like sport. If that's taken away from you, I'm extremely exposed here. And it probably comes back to that child, you know, who felt maybe isolated in certain situations, or, like, you know, it's like an abandonment issue almost. And maybe it could relate to my dad not being around too. You just wouldn't know, like, a lot of it comes from your inner child, you know, that kind of reaction, and, you know, how you get yourself even into those situations. It's probably more so to do with my inner child, like.
It's really interesting that you mention your father there again, because just as you're kind of coming through some of the worst of it, an ex-partner of yours takes his own life, and you're still only 22 years of age, like, so you have to, after the crash and the mental health difficulties you were having, and then suddenly this person is close to you, he's gone, and that brings me on to Frank Flannery, because kind of reading your story, and in the absence of your father, who was doing his job and doing his best by his family, he kind of came across to me as like your guardian angel.
Yeah, he was. And, like,
tell us who Frank was and what sort of an influence he had on you at a period of your life where you were arguably at your lowest ebb.
Yeah, so when I was coming to the end of that period, let's say, I had lost everything at that point. I had kind of disengaged from those people, and everything kind of fell apart, thank God. But I think it just came to a stage where I was completely out of control, and my mother didn't know what to do, and probably looking to sign me in somewhere at this point, like, because, again, sure, what do you do, like, in that?
She probably feels she's at the end of her rope, like, she
exactly.
just
And
doesn't
my
know what
dad's
the
still
next step
abroad,
is,
so, like, she's on her own here. And so, let's say when it came, my cousin actually, she kind of stepped in as well, had a massive influence on kind of trying to drag me away from that. Again, though, I was still playing camogie on the side, even though I was up to all this kind of nonsense. It was still there on the side after I recovered from the crash and all that. I still went straight back into it, playing with the club. So yeah, then it came. I remember in, let's say, the year before Frankie came in, so that would have been 2011. We had lost a county quarter final that year. Now, on paper, we were the best team in the county, no doubt, but we could just never get it right. I think we won everything. We were so successful coming up when we got to that senior level. There was just a wall, and we couldn't figure out. But then again, there was probably a lot of family still involved in terms of the management. We had never got a professional to come in from the outside. So Frankie, I think just a couple of the girls had contacted him and said, look, would you have any interest? And he knew a lot of the girls anyway.
And
So
you knew him personally yourself?
I
at this
didn't
stage?
know him.
You didn't know him
no,
at this stage?
I didn't, but a few of the girls did.
Okay.
So they contacted him, and he saw, like, he knew a lot of them anyway, so he saw, like, the level of
The potential.
Oh, the talent that was there was just unbelievable. So he came in, and I never forget, his fiery personality as well. Like, so I thought, so I'm definitely going to clash with this fella. Like, this is not going to go down well.
22-year-old.
Yeah, his first comment was, "Oh, I'll have the defib ready for you." So like, it kind of broke the tension too, because he kind of came in and he was very like, you know, he wasn't a dictator, but he came across really stern, and like straight away I was kind of like throwing my eyes up to say, like, we're having a hope here. But then he kind of cracked the joke and kind of, you know, kind of softened the tension. And a few of the girls had spoke to him about me as well, just in terms of things that were going on in my personal life, like, which was really nice of them too.
Yeah.
But he's a fella too that has his own demons, which is why we got on so well together. And he just pulled me aside straight away, like, and just reassured me that, like, if I ever needed anything, and I didn't know this man from Adam, like, do you know what I mean? So, and it was the first time that somebody had actually pulled me to a side and put the arm around me and kind of just gave me that little bit of protection, like, and like I felt like I could trust this person, you know, at a stage in my life where I felt like I had nothing, I had nobody, and I couldn't trust anyone. Do you know what I mean? So his influence was just from the get-go, like, putting the arm around me, and I just had a little glimmer of hope then. I was kind of like, do you know, maybe this guy mightn't be as bad as I think. And
how much of that do you think was down to Frank's own personal experiences, and he could see that in you, and how much of it was down to there's potential in this Milford team, but we ain't winning anything of any consequence unless Ashling Thompson is at her best, so I need to somehow do whatever is required to tap into that?
I think just obviously when they had the conversation with him, he just, do you know, it's like if somebody came to me and said to me at this point in my life that this girl is going through such and such, like, it's so easy to relate to them. Like, you're nearly almost desperate to talk to them because, do you know, you have so much knowledge and you've been through the mill, and, you know, he's the same type of personality too. Like, he's aggressive, but in a controlled manner. Sometimes not. I'll admit the same, but when you can just relate with somebody like that, it's almost like, you know, he feeds off me just as much as I'd feed off him, and we just became extremely close in that sense. And again, it was kind of the first person that I could really put my trust in.
You had regular check-ins together, not check-ins, but kind of one-on-ones.
Yeah,
or...
but he'd call me out as well, because I remember, and the funny thing is that, like, after losing that quarter the year before, he said, "Oh, we've 8 steps in All-Ireland," and like the whole place took off laughing, because we were like, "Jeez, if we win a county, we'll be going well." But that's just the standard that he had, and, you know, what he could see, like, and he wasn't just saying it, like, he meant it, like.
It's Jim McGuinness,
and
like,
I love
2011 he takes over Donegal team that are a mess
too. Like, yeah,
but and he told those boys, the likes of the McGee brothers, who were a part of a Donegal team that were a laughing stock, there's an All-Ireland in this group, but they just laughed. They just thought,
yeah, and I
his
just
rocker.
Exactly, like, that was the first initial thought, but I love that kind of boldness, like that cheekiness. Do you know what I mean? It really, like, I was just like, fair, do you know, that's the kind of personality that I need. Like, I need someone that's going to push me and, like, wants the best and won't settle for anything less. And so, like, let's say even when we did take off and we played games here and there, and I would have been, you know, obviously I still wouldn't have been able to control my emotions on the pitch at all. Like, I'd lash out. We got a yellow card at least every game.
And your opponents know. I mean, your name is well known. Your issues off the field are well known.
Completely,
so they're looking to tap into that.
Yeah, because of course, if somebody's affected, first of all, but is going to lose the rag, you're going to target them. And I was targeted every game without fail. But the minute I reacted, I was whipped straight away. He whipped me, and I would lose the plot. I'd throw the helmet to Hurley. Everything would be gone. I'd tell him where to go, like.
And how did he react to this? He just.
Oh, he'd say nothing. He'd be like, leave her off. Yeah.
Did you walk away from the setup at all in that time?
No.
Or threaten to walk away?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think you'd want to, because you probably
built
up such a relationship with him.
Yeah, because deep down, you know, they want what's best for you. And I had that trust in him, you see.
Exactly.
If it was anyone else, they would have got the 2 fingers, like, and I would have been out of there.
So, I mean, you can't have someone like you as your captain of an inter-county setup that's an All-Ireland contender if your emotions are still so haywire on the field. So how did you get from being wound up by opponents, getting sent off, yellow carded, been whipped off by Frank on a regular basis? How do you go from that point, which is a million miles from leadership material, to captaining the Cork team to the All-Ireland in a really short space of time? Like, how does that happen? It's a complete transformation.
Yeah, so obviously our first season was 2012 at Milford, and we went straight through. I think our county final actually we won by 25 points, and like straight to Munster, won the All-Ireland, and it was just on the trot. I think we were actually in a tie with the All Blacks at one stage. It was like 20 something championship games unbeaten. Like, we were just unstoppable. But you know, he never the discipline was always there. Like, again, if I was to lash out, and of course over time then you learn how to control your emotions. But I think that, like, obviously as the years went by too, I started to let go of that past completely. And yeah, I just slowly started to become myself again, you know, and that life was behind me. Not fully, obviously, because again, it was very fresh still, even in that short period. You know, we won 4 counties, 4 Munsters, 3 All-Irelands. And like, I think even at the time, it was like such a distraction for me too, that I almost hadn't even time to process what had even just gone on 3 years previous, 4 years previous. So
is it a stretch and too simplistic to suggest that in that 4-year spell the camogie saved your life?
100%, no doubt about it. But the people that were involved too, and my my teammates, like, they were just incredible, like, from start to finish. Like, again, but they're the type of team that'll take no nonsense, but at the same time they will be there for you, you know. And like, I've never seen that. Even like, again, inter-county is different because you don't grow up around the girls. It's a different sort of relationship you have in an
you're
inter-county
close-knit.
setting.
It's a community, like, you know.
Club is different gravy. That's family, like. Do you know what I mean? So it was my club team. It was my family, my mother, Frank Flannery, camogie, sport, like, as a whole, saved my life. 100%.
Did you enjoy it though? Do you also, like, you've gone through this really tough period and you've gone on this brilliant run, you're in a much better place. Did you enjoy your camogie then? Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Did you? Like, you loved it, did you?
Yeah, because no matter what was going on, even in my personal life, once I step onto the pitch, I just love it. There was no, obviously when I was getting frustrated and things like that, that was the negative side of it. But in general, there was nothing that I enjoyed more than being on that pitch, no matter what was going on in the background. You know, sorry, previously when you spoke about my partner committing suicide at the time, I went straight to training that evening, you know, and Frankie was the first person that pulled me aside, because I didn't tell anyone what was going on. Now, he was actually on life support at the time in hospital, so and I was in the car on the way when I got the phone call, so sure, I'm young as well at the time, I don't even know what's going on, like, and I'm in shock. So I go to training and he pulls me to the side, and, you know, again, he said, like, I don't care what I have to do to get you through this. And like, that was just the attitude he had across the 3 or 4 years, and the girls had, like, they just pulled me.
So Frank and camogie and the girls were like this warm blanket you could always put around you.
Yeah, and as time goes on and as the success grew, you know, that's when the confidence comes back. You know, that's when you come back into yourself, you come back into your own, you start to rebuild relationships with people. And then you also have a realisation that what you were doing in the past was just not right. Like, at the time when you're in it, you obviously you see no wrong in it. But like, you know, that learning process too of even I remember speaking about before in an episode about even feeling emotion again. I'll never forget the day I felt emotion again, because even going through that 3 or 4 year process where I was up to all sorts, and I said this and I meant it, you could have held a gun to my head, I had no fear. Like, someone could have came through an alleyway and put a gun to my head,
There's
and
just
I'd
a
say,
numbness
do it,
to you,
like,
is there?
a numbness, but in the weirdest way possible. So when I was coming back into myself in those times with Frankie, I remember crying one day and just being so happy because I could feel emotion again. It was and I even have frog in my throat still to this day talking about it. But it's such a happy thought. And that, even from then on, I was just so relieved to feel like Ashling again. Like, do you know what I mean? It was.
Can I ask you about
incredible?
I've seen interviews that you've given over the years, and there's so little of it about your Ashling the player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the person.
I'm trying my best to.
I know, because I
avoid-
don't like to dwell on it. I
Yeah.
don't want it to be about that either, and I said
Yeah.
that after.
But the thing is, so much of all that stuff Ashling
I know.
is built into you as a player,
Yeah.
because you played with a physicality and a drive that very few did on the intercounty scene. That
Yeah.
you were feared. You talk about being feared by people around Limerick, and that you knew certain people, and if you kind of put a cloak around you.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt there was a fear of you on the pitch as well.
Yeah.
You had the aggressions.
I had the
You know,
aggression.
like, so.
Yeah, but it became a controlled aggression.
Yeah.
And again, then when you go back I went back with Cork. Paddy Murray called me up in 2013. That was after winning our first All Ireland, and obviously the All Irelands then would have went on in March, so I would have floated in then after that. Now I didn't really have much expectation at the time, to be honest. Like again, North Cork, Milford, we wouldn't have had a great relationship with Cork, because I don't think. No, I can't speak for people because I don't know the relationships of ex-players had with the Cork managements or teams or anything like that. But, there would have been a bit of... And because we were so successful, there's always going to be animosity.
But you're unavoidable
between-
at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, so
Like no matter what the relationship has
Exactly.
been historically,
Yeah.
Milford are All Ireland champions. It looks pretty odd
Oh,
if
yeah.
the Cork County team were taken to the field and like
There's
the
none of them
back.
in it.
Exactly, and Anna's there obviously as well. And
Yeah, even when I came into that setup, like I still would have got a cold reception from a lot of those girls, and I wouldn't have cared anyway. They would have got the exact same reception off me. But I was still very reserved though. Like when I first went in, I'd never opened my mouth, or like everything came out on the pitch. Like I wouldn't
Is
say
that a
boo to
social
cat.
thing again, or is that just you?
Definitely a social
You're right.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and it was only one of my best friends on the Milford team at the time, Orla. We used to play together in midfield. She'd be the last person to tell me, but she was like, "Just go for it. You never know what might come out of it." Because when I was first asked, I was, "No, I'm not playing for them." And then she was like, "Just do it. You just never know, like what might come out of it."
And if there's an awkwardness with you around the girls initially. Is it your performances on the field then and in training, and
Absolutely.
it's so obvious to them that she
Yeah.
wants this as much as we do, that they just take to you then,
100%.
and you end up
But look,
captaining
they
them?
probably took to me from the beginning, but like you're always going to feel like the whole world is against
Yeah,
you going
yeah.
in. I could be totally wrong in terms of. No, obviously I can read a room fairly well too, like, and some people are cold, like, and that's completely fine again because you're Milford and you're successful, and that's natural, like, so. But I probably overplayed it in my mind, which is also a natural process too, like. But yeah, like I did all my talking on the pitch, and I wasn't long before like.
That's what I'm gonna get to. So you get to
completely
15
gelled. Yeah,
and
straight in, like.
and captain.
Sorry, yeah, and then obviously a couple of years on, then I captained because we had won the club.
Yes.
So the process in Cork is
Oh,
similar to
similar
Kerry,
Kerry,
where
right.
whoever wins the club goes.
But it's good that you said that. So
Represents.
you're on about being vocal. Did you feel, take even that rule away, like you come in with this group now in 15, did pressure or an excitement or just a sense of pride that I'm going to captain Cork this year, or
I was nervous about it because again, do you know what I was most nervous about was the talking, and so like it would have been because I'll have to say something now before matches, and
They don't want your teammates don't want you as captain, do they? Like just the way you've just spoken about your relationship with them, and
well, it would have been a couple of years on then, you see.
Okay.
So I first came in 13
13,
I
yeah.
captained in 15. So,
years
and
after
they would,
that.
no, I don't think they would have minded because, again, it was the process. Whoever wins the county captains.
but that is not even more of a reason for them to think like she's only got this gig because Milford are All Ireland
I
champions.
don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, to be honest.
but you didn't think like that.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't. No, and I didn't get that sense from them at all.
Okay.
Not at all. No. So,
Well, obviously not, because 15 they go on to win it. So there
Yeah.
wasn't, you have to take that away from the room because you've obviously you're very successful as captain. You led them to glory, like, so obviously
Yeah.
that animosity wasn't there that maybe was a couple of years
no,
before that. So
definitely not.
yeah.
But again, it comes with success. Like, do you know what I mean? I hate to say it like that. That's them in general, but yourself. It just comes with the.
Winning takes care of everything.
It
does,
does.
yeah.
But No, I was just nervous about even the photo ops and all this kind of stuff and going up to launches and having to speak to media. It's like a stage fright thing again, just being isolated in front of the camera, and I'm just like, oh my God, what am I going to say here?
Because you know exactly the questions are going to come your way. Same questions year on year, and that must be, even that itself, I'd say, was ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're going to ask me either, because I had exposed myself to the media in terms of my personal life, and at the time, we're not media trained. I'm just talking to someone thinking this is like just having a chat. Like, it'd be great now to get this off my chest. And it just blew. And of course, obviously that wasn't the case initially, but again, then having that media attention and something that you don't really see, especially from a female side at that time. So like, you know, there's all eyes on you, and I don't know how certain players feel about that either, even in the opposition and stuff like that. You're still a target. Now you're more of a target, like if you're
the
out.
sponsorship deals, and there's
Everything
you're on the Late Late Show, and there's like...
That doesn't happen.
And you, in your head, you know that you have sort of a dark past, like the people you've kind of been knocking around with over the years. Are you conscious in your mind thinking, God, what if someone actually or knows about this or asks me about this, or and they're not speaking to you about camogie, they're speaking to you about...
I know.
Other things.
Yeah.
And like, obviously at the time I was just kind of doing my job and like saying whatever I was asked. It's only now that like I would really pick and choose. And it's not about being afraid of being asked certain things, but obviously I've seen both sides of the media too. Like, they want to be your friend, but they're also like vultures. Like,
We're your friend.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't mean you guys. I said I was selective, so you're lucky. I'm joking. But you get me.
Yeah,
like,
I totally understand.
but at the time, you're just there, like you're just a number, and like, you know, people want what they want out of you.
They just want a piece of you.
Yeah,
that's it.
That was never my like. People might think that I would have chased that attention, but I never did. As I said, the first time I ever had a conversation with someone, that's what I thought it was. Like, I knew it was going to be. It was a newspaper article, but you never know the actual, like, what comes out, what's going to come out of it. And sure, it completely blew. Like,
they pick and choose. They'll go that I always found. That innocence again. They run with a word and then you knuckle into the story of it. It doesn't even represent what you actually talked about. And
exactly.
That's the frustration.
And
especially when you're young.
sometimes it even rolls off the tongue then, and like sometimes I felt like, it's not that I ever lied about anything, but like, do you know, looking back on it now, I obviously can articulate myself in a better way, but sometimes I would think I was just like, it was so repetitive. Like, I was doing all these articles and all this media, and I felt all this pressure to do it and say it, because people are like, oh, do you know, you've such an effect on people's lives. And so I felt an onus then to give myself to these people, because, do you know, like, I'm helping so many people at this point that, like, you just have to give yourself, and you're not selfish about it, where you should be, like, do you know what I mean?
You're just saying yes too often.
I have nobody to tell me, you know, relax it down a small bit, like, don't give everything. And
would you find that you would have said yes to a lot of this? Did you feel that you had to because you're captain, or did you feel because you're one of the most well-known names now, or did you feel like, do you know what, I'm going to do it, or was it just a case?
It was a bit of both.
Yeah,
it was a bit of both, because then of course, do you know, like, you have the social media following and all that kind of stuff, so like, you almost felt like you had to, in a sense, because first of all, you've people counting on you, you know. And it's not that, like,
what people counting on you? What do you mean?
People that I don't know. So like, even
why do they
messages
matter?
and letters and.
Oh, you mean people who like
because I was
they can
that
relate
person,
to your life and your personal issues.
Exactly.
Okay.
I was that person that didn't matter, and like, if I had read or saw something like that, or someone had responded to me, that's the way I always looked at it. And people might say that I'm a liar, but I can genuinely tell you that I always looked at it that way, and probably unknowns to myself too, is like, I was that person too that felt isolated, and I had no one, and there was nobody talking about mental health.
So people are reaching out to you.
Oh yeah, like left, right, and centre. Like.
I would find it hard to say you're a liar, because I think you've been so open throughout your career. So I would find that very hard to believe, because I think you've been very transparent about your life and your career and growing up. So I would find that probably very hard in some quarters to believe, to be honest, because you sit here and you talk very openly about situations that are quite hard, you know. So and then, so you obviously felt then, because these people maybe in the same position, that you felt that you wanted to help them or give them advice, or okay,
absolutely. Because I mean, it's kind of, unfortunately, in this country, it's kind of the only thing you can really depend on is just reading things and, like, you know, there isn't a massive structure there in terms of mental health or suicide, and you know, there's charities and things like that, but there's always so much more that you could be doing, like, in terms of that stuff. So it was those messages, especially initially, like, you know, like it would give me goosebumps even to this day reading the type of stuff and be like, even after, you know, I saw the negative side of the media, still people would text me about interviews that I did after that time and be like, you know, and even supporting me. I've never met these people in my life. Would like, we will always have your back, and like, don't ever, like being there for me.
Yeah,
it's crazy, like, and it's like, do you know, it was like payback to me for what I did for them, and do you know, it was like I didn't know it was even a two-way street. In that time when I started doing the media, I thought,
did you feel like you were starting to get the support now?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Even though you don't know these people,
I think it's because people can realise, you know, still a lot of people won't, and that's fine, like, everyone to themselves. But I think a lot of people realise I am human, like, do you know what I mean? And like, at the end of the day, like, I still have carried myself really well. I could have, you know, quit camogie. I could have just left it all behind and let the people win, like, you know, let the negativity win. Sorry, not the people, but you get where I'm coming from. And like, it's just the person I am anyway. I'm resilient, and I've come back from a lot worse. And you know, it's like, yeah, it's just mad to see the reaction. Like, especially still to this day. Like, it's not that people have ever dwelled on negativity or anything that's happened in the past, but just to see that I still have so much support to this day, like, is just, it's unbelievable. Like, even though it was a long time coming, you know, even that one or two messages I got initially, like, it's just, people don't realise the power of words, like.
And all the while, you're part of this dynasty. Like, this is one of the great teams. You win 4 All-Ireland in 5 seasons, and you're outperforming all expectations. Everyone thinks this Cork team are just going to keep going on, and despite that level of expectation, you keep coming back every year and dealing with the pressure as the group that you are. Like, some of the greatest camogie players of the last 40 years are in this Cork team.
Yeah.
And the medals are coming in, and the all the adulation. Like, where did that fit into your life at the time? Like, how do you look back on that 5-season spell of just non-stop success?
It happened so fast, like, you know, that you don't even really have time to dwell on it. Like, it's just, and again, I would say, like, again, just coming from such a young age and that success that was in national school, secondary school, like, the whole way up, it's like, you know, it's just that hunger for success just never went away, no matter what was happening. And again, like, to go from such a successful club into Cork, and like, even let's say when we were winning All-Irelands with Cork, we were still winning All-Irelands with clubs. So like, you're winning counties, Munsters, and then you're going straight into club All-Irelands, then you're going straight into Cork winning a Munster final, and then straight into winning an All-Ireland final. It's just like on the trot, like, and it's crazy. But you know what, at that time, and I'll always say that later on in life, and I thought I saw, was a Paddy Maher said the same, that like, you really only start to enjoy it in these years, I feel, in your later years. It's not that I didn't appreciate it at the time, but you just,
it's a whirlwind.
It's a whirlwind.
There's
like,
no reflection period, because you're in the bubble of it. You don't sit back, and because you're still playing, it's very hard to sit and think, wow, that was pretty damn good. Like,
yeah.
So was there ever a moment in that run where you could take 30 seconds just to go, this is unbelievable?
No, I don't think.
And is
so.
that why you feel it just went by in the blink of an eye?
Yeah.
Because it was this non-stop roller coaster.
Non-stop, because, you know, when you finish up with county, you're pretty much back into club. Yep. And then the club season, the All-Irelands didn't finish till March at that time. So the inter-county is already well started. Like, you know, you're nearly tipping championship at that point. So it went from kind of like, I don't think I'd went on a holiday, like, even left the country for about 4 years. Like, you know, so I think when I did captain Cork to All-Ireland, and when I was standing on the podium and lifted the trophy, and I was crying because obviously a lot had happened in my personal life, and to me that was real success.
That's a very good point, because you mentioned, you know, the moment you start crying and feeling emotional again. How was that to be open doing that in front of everybody?
I felt like yourself? I was on my own.
Wow.
Yeah, I felt like I was on my own in that moment, because, and like, it's mad because the thoughts of my personal life would never come into my head in a sporting environment, but it did in that moment. And I think, like, even the words I probably used in my head at the time were like, look at you now, like.
So there's an immense feeling of pride in that moment.
Yeah, proud of myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm never proud of myself. You know, I've never been selfish enough to be like, you are good enough, like, you know, you should be proud of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, you can't be proud, you can't, like, speak about success, and, you know, it's like an Irish thing.
It's
like,
an Irish culture,
yeah.
yes.
But in that moment, I was like, no, I'm selfish here now, and, like, you deserve this. You deserve it, and you've worked your ass off for it, like, and, you know, look at you now, like.
Must be very proud of your mother then as well at that moment.
Yeah, and it was my family too. They were crying as well. The last
They're all
people
there
on the
that day,
earth
and,
that will cry. My brothers won't cry. That's the only time I've ever seen them cry, was either I'm causing uproar at home as a teenager.
Never tears of joy.
Never tears of joy unless they're inside in Croke Park watching me succeed. And, like, to me, like, and that's why I owe so much to sport. And, like, I will always say that I owe my life to sport and coaches and my teammates, because to see my family crying in Croke Park is, like, that's the pinnacle for me, like, do you know what I mean?
Did Frankie cry?
Probably. I probably made him cry.
We started with last year's All Ireland. I want to finish with that, but the success dries up, and then in 2019 there's the assault charge, and you plead guilty to that, and I saw you quote as saying alcohol doesn't suit me. So was that like, were you kind of where that just seems to have come out of the blue a little, or was that a pattern of behaviour that you were kind of slipping back into some of your old ways? Or I know you don't want to go into that in too much detail, but just in a general sense as to kind of what the background was to you finding yourself in that situation on the back of such a brilliant few years. Yeah,
so I think, like, a lot of it, I'd say I would have lost myself a small bit in, like, all the attention and stuff like that. Definitely, like, over the years. I think initially when I first, like, had a platform and all that kind of stuff for, like, 2 or 3 years, I never really it never bothered me. I never noticed it. Like, you know, it was nothing to me. But of course, like, as your platform grows and you get all these opportunities and sponsorship deals and you're just everywhere, like, again, it's like you can't say no. And you're just doing things then for the sake of it without even thinking about it. So, and you know what? I think, just going back to when I was saying that I never processed even my personal life before I stepped back into, like, that Milford success, I think that process even started to happen 3 or 4 years into my sporting career with Cork. And that's when I started to get really bad anxiety, all those emotions, everything just started coming up again, like, and I started to kind of lose control a small bit in terms of that stuff. And I think, like, I was probably, again, when we had the opportunity to drink, then I'd probably binge for, like, 3 days. Again, I'm actually not someone that's fond of alcohol. Like, I know when I say that, binge, like, but as in we might have won a Munster final or something, and, you know, the girls might be out for a night, but, like, there would have been a couple or 3 or 4 of us that might go for a 3-day bender, like. But I'll never forget that time when that happened. We were playing Offaly up the country, and we were absolutely shocking, and I lost the plot on the pitch. Like, there was no way I should have been going out, like, in that state, like, coming off the field at the time. And, you know, I don't think I had a lot of insomnia as well at the time. I wasn't sleeping. I definitely wasn't mentally stable, I would say. And I'm not blaming it on it.
Were you talking to them at the stage, or was this just you taking all this on yourself at this time?
Oh, myself.
All yourself?
Yeah. Because, again, you just get lost in it, and time moves so quickly, and there's no room to speak to someone or go to counselling, or we didn't have anyone, a psychologist or anything like that, involved in the setup, again, which is so important. But, you know, at the time it wasn't a thing. So
it's fascinating because you say the sport saved you and obviously allowed you to focus on something else to drag you out of the depths that you were in 2012 after your partner died. But it also completely suppressed your feelings and blocked you from dealing with any of it.
Exactly.
So it was going to come to the surface at some stage.
Yeah.
And it did, 7 years later.
Yeah.
And because you'd never had the opportunity to actually
Process.
go through those rooms in your mind. Suddenly
No.
you're faced with it.
Yeah, even that's, my partner's suicide and all that. Like, I never processed any of that because the success came initially and for years.
So is that
7
like
years.
a ticking time bomb in your mind, do you think?
I
At
think
some
so.
point, at some stage down the
Yeah.
road, be it in your 20s or 30s or 40s, you were going to have to face this
Yeah,
head on at some point.
absolutely. Like, and you almost think you're untouchable at that point, like, especially when you're inside in Cork and you might be in a certain setup. I won't, say, but like, you might be in a certain place and you'll feel like you're protected, but you're not, But again, there was nobody really to kind of tell me, oh, pipe it down here or just mind yourself. And it was only a couple of us that went out, you see, and even one of the girls said that, like, after, I just knew it was a bad idea, like, I should have stepped in.
Yeah.
And again, there's no excuse for it. Like, there was just too much drink involved. We got there late as well, so I remember I was just downing drink.
Catching
and-
up, yeah.
Do you know
So
what I
what's
mean?
different
And-
about you today? What's changed in terms of the likelihood that something similar could happen again? Where are you in terms of having dealt with 2009 car crash, 2012, the suicide, now having to deal with the fact that you were convicted of an assault? So 2024,
I have
where
no
are you?
conviction.
Okay, but
Yeah.
having come, I know there was compensation paid on the understanding that would be the end of
charged
the
or whatever,
conviction.
like,
Yeah, there's no
but
criminal
nothing
record.
came out of it. Like, yeah.
So where are you now with, if you were in a similar situation, and how more equipped are you to deal with that now, for example?
Very well. Like, I think first of all, it's the environment. So I definitely didn't have the protection. Not that I should need it either. You should know how to carry yourself in a public setting. But again, of course, it's different for. I hate doing this whole male versus female thing, but it is kind of different in a sense that you don't have that protection as much in a female environment. A sporting environment. Again, you don't have the access to people like psychologists and things like that, or even just, like, let's say with you, they might put you in a pub, but it'll be a closed off area because they know the targets that come with, and especially when you're out drinking and stuff like that, they know how easy it is, like, for incidents to happen, and especially when you're in a team environment. But it's
Things
not
escalate like over nothing. And
Exactly.
This is that, yeah. So
it can happen very easily, so you don't have that kind of protection in a female environment. You're just going out like anyone. And I think even at the time there was nobody really around to even step in, so I didn't really have the protection that maybe I could have.
But for you, it must be a little bit different because we said, like, you generally are one of the superstars of the game. So I'd say attention probably was very easy to come to you. I'm not saying you're looking for it, but people know who you are. People know your story.
I'm
so
in Cork as well.
You're in
like,
Cork
so
as well. So that must be a challenge in itself as
It
well.
is.
Because eyes are on you. That's the inevitability with it.
Absolutely. So now it's kind of a case where, first of all, it's the environment completely and the people I'm with. But you'll never, please God, no, like, you just know you'll never make that same mistake. Like, you'll never fall into the same trap again. But for me, again, it's all about the environment. People you surround yourself with is a massive one. And again, that comes back to the people I surrounded myself with as a teenager. It's the same thing when I go out now. Like, I'll surround myself with the right people. And even when you do see that kind of, you can sense it almost. It's like an energy field. You can sense that coming. Or like, I would just never put myself in a situation like that. I would say that I definitely put myself in that situation to get targeted. Like, I was riled up. I should have never went out. And then I started drinking. I put myself in that situation. Like,
But you're older now. You're more
and
mature
I'll
now.
yeah,
You're
and
more
I've always
experienced
taken
now.
ownership for that. I've never put the blame on anyone or tried to defend it. You can't, like.
But Ashling then as well is, she's doing everything well on the pitch. Let's not upset. There's that side of it too. Like,
Yeah.
There's no need to say it to you. And then maybe now, hindsight, as you said, you understand the repercussions as a result. You're older, you're
I'm
smarter,
older.
and you know how it works.
Exactly.
So
And I'm
The R
wiser
word is
and-
going to be coming up for
The
you.
what, sorry?
The R word, the dreaded R word, retirement. You really struggled, openly acknowledge how badly you struggled once camogie was whipped away from you after your neck and back injury.
Yeah.
At some point, we're not going to write you off today because you're a current All-Ireland champion. You're still playing. Cork are among the favourites to win this year's All-Ireland. But at some point, you're not going to play till you're 50. So are you
I wouldn't be surprised.
are you
Can
better
be
equipped,
done.
do you think? Given the people in your background, we know that you're in a relationship with Darragh O'Donovan, and he's obviously still flying high with Limerick, and
Yeah.
your friends, your family, if you were to pick up an injury, or if in a year's time you decide, you know what, my race is run, mentally, physically, emotionally, are you better equipped to cope without camogie being there than you were 10, 12 years ago?
I suppose you'll never know until it's gone, like, but I would say that, like, again, even let's say that last incident, I stepped away from camogie then the following season, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. But I also met Dara around that time, and I would say that, like, even, you know, you asked me the question of how do you separate yourself now from incidents like that happening or avoid it. He has a lot to do with that too, and Limerick and their profession set up and being around them, and, you know, it's like that has also given me.
So he's been a really great influence for you.
Massive.
In terms of not even sport, but just
professionalism and how you hold yourself off the pitch, and just respect in general for myself, for the people around me, and again who I surround myself with, the environments I put myself in. But he's also given me that drive and taking that break and coming back and reflecting, and then going through the cruciate injury and having that time out again. It's just more time for reflection on yourself. So, like, as much as it is a curse, like all these incidents, all these things that have happened throughout my life and the people that I've met along the way have been such a blessing. And
is the ACL rehab period a period in your mind where you can pinpoint that and go, well, I had no camogie training to go to there.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of time on my own rehabbing the knee. That's a little period of time where you can reflect on going, do you know what, when the time comes, I'm going to be okay.
Absolutely, because again, when do you ever get 9 months out of the year where you can just go flat out in the gym? I never came back fresher and fitter. Like, I think I'm peaking, like, at 34. And I said it last year, even after the ACL, I said in an interview that, like, I have so much more to give. I saw it that season before I did it, because we had just finished up inter-county. It happened in my first club game back, and, like, I knew, like, there's way more in the tank here, you know, and a lot of that comes from the time that I took out, and then the ACL, and then, you know, a lot to do with Dara as well in terms of, you know, bringing my performance and how I mind myself, how I cater for myself, nutrition, everything like that. I'm just at a completely different level to what I was when I was playing. You know, I would say that I'm definitely in a better position now than what I was 10 years ago. Like,
are you a better player than you were a decade ago?
I would say so, yeah. Like, I can't remember the last time I got a yellow card. Like,
who is this person?
Look how far.
full circle.
Do you know, and it's just.
But you're not playing with any less aggression or physicality. Is it just that you're
it's
more
controlled
Yeah.
completely, and it's just, and that makes it so much more enjoyable for me too. Like, as in, it's just really, I surprise myself every day in terms of, you know, like, again, it's just it's constant self-reflection about where I've come from, whether it's sporting injury, whether it's personal. You know, it's a constant reflection, and it's like, when it's there, and, you know, I obviously, as a female athlete, having children and family, and a lot of that probably dictates retirement. But myself and Dara would have a great understanding of, look, if it happens, it happens, but I'm at a point in my life where, like, I want to keep going for success, and I will come away when I feel second best.
Well, it's clear that you're absolutely loving it by the way you're talking, because
she's going training tonight after this, heading straight to training this evening. So that takes us back. We started with 2023, so I think it's a nice way to end. I remember talking to some of the Dublin players after they beat Kerry in last year's All-Ireland, and even the guys who'd won their 9th. This was the sweetest, because everyone had written them off. They'd lost in 2021 and 2022, and everyone thought this unbelievable spell is coming to an end. And that beating Kerry in last year's All-Ireland that trumped them all for the likes of McCarthy and Cluxton and Mick Fitzsimons and even Brian Fenton, for example, who won a 7. You could tell from the way they celebrated.
The emotion from it,
So Cork went 5 years without an All-Ireland. You, during that period, take a step away after the 2019 issues. You tear your ACL. Last year's win over Waterford, it was your 5th, but it must have been the sweetest of them all.
It really was, yeah. And obviously the ACL probably had a bit to do with that, but it wasn't even that. I think even coming away in 2019, sure, again, it's like going back to the crash and then captaining Cork. It was the same kind of feeling, coming away from that thinking, you know, and you know what, that was probably up there in terms of the worst things that I've ever been through, like, in terms of personal experience after that time. And again, when you come away from that and you just work so hard towards something, and then you have a minor, what I'd call the ACL would have been a minor setback compared to some of the things that I've gone through.
There's perspective for you right there. The way
Yeah,
it comes
so
from.
like, it's just, it felt the exact same. Like, it just, and again, that's probably why I have the same drive to keep going. Like, there's just no stopping. Like, because I owe it to myself, I owe it to my family, and that's it. Now it's I don't really look at anybody else. I owe it to myself. You know, I want to be the best. I want to finish up the best. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to settle for second best, because I never have. I've never been that way. I want to be on top of my game when I walk away. Do you know what I mean? And
so you going back? You going back to back this year?
Look, we're going well.
That's the plan.
That is the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going well. You know, I do think that it's. We always say that, like, there's, you know, and it's a good way to be, that like we try not to focus on the opposition or anything like that. We know that if we put our minds to it, like, it's probably ourselves that'll beat us. But yourself, like,
championship. That's
championship is championship. It's unpredictable. It's same with
last
year.
First time in this interview now. First time in this chat, you've reverted to being an inter-county player. You started.
The wall came up.
You're starting to sound like Lee Keegan now, in his pomp with Mayo. We're going to take each game, next game on its own merits.
They never put me in interviews, so I said too much.
But look, last year, like, we actually started off terrible. We got knocked out of Munster Championship by Waterford in a quarter final, I think it was. So, and I remember even saying, "Jeez, we won't make it out of the group. We won an All Ireland. Now we're building, and we are going strong, but anything could happen. We'll be contenders, I would imagine, but." We'll just take it day by day, game by game, and just hope for the best.
I'd like to see Ashling train tonight now, sitting for this long, knowing what's ahead.
Yeah,
no, it's fine. That'd be grand. Don't fear me.
Ashling, it's just been a privilege. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and to go through everything, and the good and the bad and all that's in between, and give us an insight as to what it's like walking around Cork with all those All Ireland medals. Look, to be a camogie star in Cork, if you've got anything fewer than 4 in your pocket, you're kind of a nobody. Like,
what's the story of Mayo then?
Well, look, that's a completely different story. Best luck in the weeks to come, and we'll hopefully catch up when you finally pull the plug on it.
Yeah,
we'll have you in again to talk about what it's like to no longer be an inter-county star, and you can reflect on it all, and knowing that it's all done. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a million.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, so that was the Ashling Thompson episode of the Square Ball podcast. I kind of feel this way after each of our guests kind of wrap up, and we take a breath and go, wow, wasn't that amazing? But Jesus,
unbelievable.
How amazing a chat was that?
I just thought it from just her openness, and it's taught by putting perspective on what sport and life is about. I think she summed up brilliantly with the ACL. It was only a minor compared to the toughness that she went through. It was just a really, really good insight into how people can come out the better side of stuff.
Yeah, phenomenal. We're so grateful to Ashling for all the time she gave to us, and the openness and the honesty. That is the 5th episode, as we keep saying. We have Pádraig Maher, Darren O'Sullivan, Sean Kavanagh and Keith Higgins, all very different chats, but all with wonderful insight and a fascinating story on their lives and their careers on and off the field. So feel free to go back and listen to all of those. Do comment on them. Give us an insight as to how you're feeling about them, whether you want to suggest a guest or two as we go further into the summer and further down the road of this. I know people hate us using the word journey, but we're on a journey.
Feels good.
Yeah, we're kind of not even halfway there yet, so we've got an awful lot more still to come. You can get us on Instagram, Twitter, you can get us on YouTube as well, all of the William Hill social media channels. We're having great fun doing it. I hope you're having a similar level of fun in listening to it. And do stay tuned for what's to come. We've got a couple of brilliant episodes coming up over the next couple of weeks. So our thanks to Lee for today. Our thanks to Ashling again. And we will be with you very soon on the Square Ball podcast.